When you study realism, we have to study defensive realism, offensive realism, so on and so forth. Question came in your mains. Last paper QC last year, difference between 2023, difference between offensive realism and defensive realism. So Latin America, you see, Latin America was always seen to be under the sphere of influence of USA. USA for a long time has backed dictators over there. Okay, it has created, engineered certain regime change operations over there. And now that Latin America is relatively stable, how it is resisting the American model. So hedging between India and China, this again dilutes India's exclusive influence, because India cannot offer what China can offer. The capabilities are different. You see, the first 1967 Congress will lose election in 8 states, coalition governments will emerge. Professor Rajni Kothari has used the term era of one party dominance. That will get over. So you see, type of government and the stability of government have a bearing on the foreign policy of a country.
Congratulations on clearing UPSC 2024. Watching you succeed is really inspiring.
Thanks. I have been in your shoes. I know how overwhelming the start feels.
Exactly. There's so much to cover, I don't even know where to begin.
I felt the same. That's why I joined the GS Foundation course by Vision IAS, which offers structured classes, expert faculty, and regular revision. It gave me clarity and momentum.
And you stayed consistent with it?
Yes, I followed the complete roadmap offered by the course. If you're aiming for 2026, start with this course. It offers you holistic coverage with every stage of the exam covered seamlessly. This is where your journey will truly begin.
Got it. I will definitely explore the course. Where can I find the details?
Just visit their website or call on the given numbers.
Okay, so all of you have seen the question, paper 2 question of your PSIR optional. What was your impression about the question? Prima facie, what comes to your mind when you see this question? Easy, tough, moderate? How was it? Moderate? So this question, actually it is not moderate. It demands application of several concepts, good understanding of geopolitics around us. So it's a mixture of theoretical framework and the contemporary things that is happening around the world we are living in. A lot of developments are going on, and these developments are amply captured by this paper. There are questions on US withdrawal from WHO. Then there are theoretical questions like this. Every year without fail you get question from comparative politics on its different methodologies. This time they have asked the psychological approach. Then they have asked Operation Sindoor, how it is neo-realism and asserting India's realism is what they have asked. So a lot of things which are happening around us have made to your question paper, and that is how political science question is obviously, that is what it should be composed of. So it's on expected lines, but it's not an easy paper. As I said, apart from theoretical framework, it requires your good understanding of the geopolitical things that is happening around us, the complex world that we are living in. So let us try to discuss these questions. Again, as I said, the comparative politics without fail. There is hardly a year when you don't get question on comparative politics. So it says that the psychological approach to the study of comparative politics. Now, what exactly is psychological approach? Those who have studied this must be aware of something about various approaches to comparative politics. Any thinker that you can name here? Anything that comes to your mind? Yes, any thinker that comes to your mind? So, first of all, Lucian Pai. He is the one who has stressed on it, okay? He is the one who has stressed on the psychological approach, and what he says that we need to have, there is a linkage between micro level psychology, okay? He emphasizes on a micro level psychology. It's there in your PPT as well. And I cannot write on this actually. So micro level psychology and macro level political development. He says there is a link here. Now origin you can trace to Aristotle on sociability. What is Aristotle approach on sociability? He says man is always a social animal. Okay, you cannot exist in isolation. From there on you can move to Hobbes on fear and power. Now what is Hobbes say on fear and power? He says that because of this inevitable fear, people from, what was the earlier thing before the emergence of nation states? State of nature. From here he talks about social contract. Okay, social contractists like Hobbes, like Locke. So why it's there? Because of our collective security need. Then John Locke has stressed on freedom and rights. So all these things are possible at the macro level. Why? Because the fear psychology operates at the micro level. Now how it can be done? The methodology you need to emphasize on, the surveys, the experiments, the case studies, so on and so forth you can talk about, and their application to the political culture. Now what is the issue with this? It has a reductionist approach. What is reductionist approach? It tries to make things very simple into binary, which is not the actual case. And there are other variables also which this theory does not include. But still you can sum it up. It's a 10-mark question, so you can sum it up by saying that there are certain issues in the limitations. There are certain limitations in the approach of reductionism. It neglects the structural factors. You can emphasize on that. And democratic relevance you can talk about. Okay, there is a lot of relevance for democratic movements currently when it comes to mobilizing the people and fostering the social movements. So there is a lot of link between contemporary events and the role of identity politics in global politics also, which are being ignored by psychological factor. So just start with a theoretical framework, talk about this, that how these things are interlinked, how attitude, belief, emotion, political behavior, everything is interlinked. It's not to be studied, or it cannot be observed in isolation. And then there is a link between micro level psychology, macro level political development, after which we have emphasized, name the scholar. He's the one who talked about it, American political scientist he is, so he's the one who talked about it in the early stage. And that is how you can conclude this answer. Okay, quite an easy one it is, mostly theoretical. And in your exam, there is no paper in the last 10 years which is devoid of any question on comparative politics. Without fail, you get question. Okay, just you need to include some new examples which are happening around you if the question, if there is a probability in your question. Not because you know it, but because if the question demands it. Here there is not such case. Now the next one, when we see neoliberalism, lightened neo-realist dark view of international politics. So two school of thoughts are here, neoliberal and the neo-realist thought. So you see neorealists are often said to be pessimist. Why they are labeled as pessimist? Why they are labeled as pessimist, neoliberals, neorealists? Neorealists are labeled as pessimists because of their assumption. The inherent assumption is what? That there is chaos and anarchy. Chaos and anarchy in the world. Why is there chaos and anarchy in the world? Because there is no world government. Only sovereign nation state exist, but there is nothing to lead government at the highest level. Integration of world sovereign governments to result into world government is not there. Okay, this is the neo-realist approach. That is what the question says, that how neoliberal, how they are in contrasting with the neo-realist. How it lightens the dark view. Dark view matlab, dark view here talks about the pessimist view of neo-realists, that there will, war will be there and people are, by default, they are power maximizers. That is what nations also become because such people are leading them. This is the neo-realist view. Okay. Now what neoliberals say? Neoliberals, Joseph Nye Cohen, what they say? That there is something called complex interdependence. What is this complex interdependence? That despite their competing claims, there is still scope for cooperation between the sovereign countries. Mutual gains bring them together. Okay, so they lighten the dark view. Okay, now neoliberals will talk about institutions. In fact, multilateralism is an offshoot of neoliberalism. Okay, so neoliberal will talk about institutions. They will reduce uncertainty by pitching in certain order. Okay, they will pitch in for certain order, a rule-based order. Thank you so much. You made my task easy. Thank you. I'm used to writing on board, not on PPTs, so that's why this disconnect. Thanks again. Okay. So, what is the view that neo-realist inherent view that there is disorder and chaos, but neoliberal have slightly positive view because they emphasize on institution, reduce uncertainty, build trust, soft power. Joseph Nye talked about soft power. I hope you know these terms. Soft power will include persuasion and ideology should be avoided here. Directly don't say ideology, but persuasion. You are persuaded that this ideology is doing good to you. Okay. It will have cultural anecdotes. Okay. TV shows, movies, products. This is what American soft power at its peak. So now there will be structural interdependence, as Susan Strange has said. Now John Mearsheimer today is the greatest scholar of IR in USA, and he calls himself offensive realist. When you study realism, we have to study defensive realism, offensive realism, so on and so forth. Question came in your mains. Last PYQC last year, difference between 2023, difference between offensive realism and defensive realism. He is the greatest proponent. Now he talks about limitation of institutions. And there he points towards the failure of multilaterals. Okay, so there is a limitation. It's not working the way it should work. The theory with which it was formed is not giving result. Now he is balanced by the neoliberal. Okay, that neoliberal channel power through rules and norms because they emphasize on rules and norms. Realists say these rules and norms are not being adhered with. Neoliberals say, no, these rules and norms are the only way forward. So these are the two contrasting school of thought. Now you can give some example, COVID-19, COVAX cooperation. You know about this, okay, how it was developed. And the resources which countries pooled in. India giving vaccine to more than 100 countries in the world, not because we were expecting something immediately in return. This Covishield, which worked with the cooperation of India, Oxford, and which was the other one, AstraZeneca. So here you can say that neoliberal also have, their theories are also valid. Cooperation is going on. WTO you can talk about, okay, based on Ricardo's theory of trade advantage. WTO adjudicates anything related to the tariff and non-tariff issue. Then Paris Accord regarding climate. Now we are very soon going to witness an intergovernmental panel on artificial intelligence. This is in pipeline. It will come in, I guess, 1 year. So such things are, which agenda? Neoliberal or neorealist? This is neoliberal, building institutions, trying to navigate a way forward amidst chaos. Are you understanding this? So these examples will give you sufficient point how neoliberal are dismissing, lightening the dark view of neorealist. But these two prominent schools will remain there, okay? Both paradigm are complementary. Realism stresses on security concerns, and neorealists, they often talk about institutional hope, not through countries, but by building institution. Now again, neoliberals say that when this this group, when when neoliberals talk about building institutions, these institutions are driven by one major power. Okay, it's not very inclusive, it's not very equity based. Okay, this is what they often say. So this thing goes on. That is what your question should be. Mostly you need to be in favor of neoliberal here, that they talk about institutions, and these institutions will reduce the tentativeness in the existing world order. This is what this question is. Okay, quite an easy one. Theoretical, but examples, as I tell you, need to be contemporary. If you want good marks, theory plus ongoing examples you have to quote. Okay, moving on to the next one. What it says. Okay, thank you so much. Non-traditional security threat in the context of food and environment crisis. So, what is this non-traditional threat that we are talking about? So, on one hand, you have traditional threat. What do we call traditional threat? Traditional threat is the military threat. Okay, security threat posed by militaries, powerful militaries of sovereign country. Now, what is this non-traditional threat? This is your non-military threat. What all things can come here? In non-military threat, see the question, non-traditional security in the context of food and environment crisis. Food and environment crisis, is it because of military intervention? Then this is because of climate change. This is because of climate change. This is because of soil degradation. Okay, food insecurity. And what we are witnessing, how do we see this? The scholars Amartya Sen and Mehbul, he was from Pakistan, Mehbul, they have talked about development as freedom. Okay, Sen has also talked about liberty, liberty being a paradigm of development. His book, The Idea of Justice, emphasizes on justice and liberty. But he says development as freedom, but it should not only be based on numbers. It should also be based on inclusivity and distribution. Now, non-traditional threats, food security, social cohesion, migration, instability, these are the threats that we are witnessing today. And they are mostly not driven by not by military. These threats are not driven by military. These are non-military threats. Now, environmental issues, similarly, climate change, loss of biodiversity, climate-induced disasters. We see things around us. Everywhere in India also, around the world, so much of natural disaster we are witnessing. You see the rains that's happening in North India and other parts. So there is no role of military, at least till now no one has been able to prove that some military or intelligence has done this. These are purely natural phenomena. Okay, so that is what you can do. You can write here, and you can conclude with the sustainable development goals. That is why so much emphasis is laid on sustainable development. Just one line you can conclude that sustainable development, that without compromising on the present demand, the demands of the future, the present demands would also be met. Then you can quote Amartya Sen's development as freedom as the concluding paradigm over here. Quite a simple question this is. Moving on to the next one. Say again, you can quote about? You can, yes, you can quote Amartya Sen, Mehboob, Vandana Shiva, you can talk about these people. You can. Now, discuss the political socialization of open and closed society. So, when you hear this term, open and closed society, which scholar comes to your mind? Yes, the one and only Karl Popper. So he is the one who has systematically studied and analyzed the functioning of closed and open societies. Now, contrast, he has given a contrast that how open societies function, how closed societies function. Now he talks about the process of political socialization. So there are multiple agents. There is family, there is school, there are colleges, there are family gatherings, so on and so forth. Government institutions are there, non-government institutions are there. So all these are platforms. What happens on this platform? Participation happen, engagement happen, which results into free flow of ideas. Okay, free flow of ideas because of interaction, which is also relatively free. But in closed society, there is this top-down control. The supreme leader remains there. See the example of Iran. See the example of North Korea. See the example of neighbor China. Okay, so there is this top-down approach. Whatever the top decides, the others have to follow suit. Dominance of elite. Elite here refers to those who are in the good books of the ruling rulers. Maybe a monarch, maybe a like in China, there is no monarch, but Communist Party is there. Then propaganda, it relies on propaganda. Closed societies rely on propaganda. How? See the Iranian regime. Okay, massive propaganda it indulges into. Chinese regime, just a matter of fact, in China hardly any domestic flight runs on time. Why? Because they do massive checking inside. There are marshals kept there. Why? Because there is a threat. Now where is the threat from? You are the threat to most of the countries in the world. So because the state wants to control everything, your baggage will be thoroughly checked. Everything will be opened and seen and then kept. This will take 2 hours, so the flight will be, most of the domestic flights are delayed there. Why? Because of this propaganda. Iranian propaganda, Iran said that we have bombed Israel. They did, but not to the extent that they were claiming. Okay, so closed societies rely on this propaganda. Then there is censorship. You cannot express yourself freely. Your thoughts, your expression will be curbed, both offline and online. You try defying it, you will be punished. Coercion, fall in line. There is no option but fall in line. Then open society, issue is that it is democratic, but stability factor will not be there. Okay, it will be tentative. Why? Because it depends on numbers. Okay, open societies by default would be democratic. Now that depends on numbers, so mostly parliamentary form of government, it would be unstable. And because there is free flow of ideas, we are not talking about which type of idea. Okay, we have Supreme Court judgments in India where they have freed Naxal sympathizers saying that merely possessing Maoist literature does not make one Maoist. Are you aware of it? Seditious slogans, raising seditious slogan is not sedition. This is Honorable Supreme Court of India. So if raising seditious slogan is not sedition, then what is sedition? The court answered once you try to implement it. This is Supreme Court of India. I hope you are aware of it. See the conviction rate in sedition cases. Hardly there is any conviction. Okay, because the charges are not there. Okay. So that is the problem, that because of this relative free flow of ideas, here we are not talking about which type of idea. The idea may be against the state itself. Okay, which an open society and an open state tries to perpetuate. So it will be unstable. Closed society, stability is there, but repression will always be there. Because you cannot express yourself freely. So as we see when we study fundamental rights, that right, what are rights? They are entitlements, social and political entitlements, which help in, which provide us a congenial environment for us to achieve our true potential. But here individual will not be able to achieve the true potential. Individual will also remain suppressed. So Indian context, you can say that India by and large remains open and pluralistic. However, you can add that there are some tendencies. Okay, there are some periodic tendencies we have witnessed. Where attempts have been made towards closed society. No need to give any specific example here, just talk about censorship, media, movies, individuals. That is it. This much you can write here. Overdeveloped as in? See, state does interfere in day-to-day life. Okay. Hamza Alvi, I got it, but I don't think that will be very contextual here. Overdeveloped state, don't make it India-centric. Just one example will be enough. Because again, it's a 10 marker, so you don't have that much of flexibility. That is not wrong. What you are saying is not wrong. I am saying that after writing all this, probably another theorist would not fit. So start with Karl Popper, describe the characteristics of open and closed society, the inherent limitations and the advantage. Both things, different dimensions have to be attached. If it was a 250 word, then you can of course Hamza Alvi and you can quote even more scholars. And then conclude with Indian example, leaning in favor of India being a largely open society. Okay. Don't say that India is becoming a closed society or all this. Okay. Next thing. Next question, you see red lipstick movement in the context of feminist right. Now why this question came and when this red lipstick movement originate? Is it a recent phenomena? Is it a recent phenomena, the red lipstick movement? Then it came in. This came in early 1990s. Before that, a class B. 1990s and even before, traced to what is called the second wave feminism. Okay, when women were trying to participate in work, okay, that we need to have our own livelihood. First was about political rights, second it was about economic right. Today to abhi to fourth wave hai, so that's not here. So why it was asked? Because after Trump's second tenure, Trump's second tenure, people in USA started quoting it again, cutting across the gender. Men were using it, women were using it, transgenders were using it, because of things which Trump said in his inaugural speech after assuming the office, of different things. I wonder if you watched his speech. Of several things he said, there are only two genders. Now that immediately created a backlash, that he will delegitimize the transgender rights and there will be no political legal recognition, so on and so forth. So there women and men and trans both started this red lipstick movement. Okay, red lipstick movement started there and they started symbolizing it. One of them, men are saying that I'll keep supporting it unless we have a new president. Okay, this is assertion. See, second wave talked about that women need to be into workspace, irrespective of their appearance. Appearance does not matter. Now here you see a contrast here. Okay, lipstick is used for what? It is used we can call it a cosmetic or a beauty product you can call. So see, in activism, symbolism matters. Okay, in activism, symbolism matters. So here they say that we are asserting our autonomy. We are asserting our autonomy. Now Chile, Iraq, and here you can, Arab Spring you can quote. Iran, it has happened. Okay, where women are trying to assert their rights, their identity. So because of this thing, after Trump again coming to the White House, a backlash happened with this, and they invoked the same movement which happened many years before. Okay, that is why this question came. Now what are the challenges that they always face? The patriarchal narratives. Narratives that women have been assigned a certain work to do. Okay, there is a certain type of, you can call this narrative building as typecasting. Typecasting for women, where they have been assigned a certain role and don't try to act out of it. Then struggle against slut shaming, that if you are using this, you are inviting trouble and you are trying to lure in more people. So that is also one component. Victim blaming. Now Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi, heard of this person? Intersex from India. Now she has often talked about this. She has often taken political stands also. Okay, at times with government, at times, sometimes against the government also. Talks about child rights, trans rights. And she always carries her bright red lipstick, okay. So try to conclude this with the character of contemporary feminism. Just don't go exploring the fourth wave, that is completely different. Okay, stick to the assertion of rights of women, the rightful place that they have to find in the workstations. Okay, this would be your complete answer over here. See, she is there, Atkinson Grace is there, but their views at times are little radical. That is what I said. That can, when I look at the state, it looks like a male to me, and then equating rape with the same thing, the patriarchal thing. So again, I don't see much scope over here. Okay, stick to the question here. That will do all of us good. Emphasize on this. You can mention how it rejuvenated Trump 2.0 and his remark that there are only two genders. That created this backlash. Then you can talk about the history. Okay, contrast with the second wave. History, you can say that women yearning for workspace. Okay, they're finding their rightful place in the workspace. That is what it was about. contrasted with second wave a bit, then you can write about all these things, and some examples you can give. That is all. Now, world currently has been in the throes of a twin process of democratic backsliding and democratic backlash. Two things are mentioned here. These two appear to be contradictory, but they are not. They are actually supplementing each other, complementing and supplementing each other. How? Let us try to understand. What is democratic backsliding? When elected governments try to undermine the democracy. This is how you can define it. And what is democratic backlash? When institutions and individuals. So here you can talk about judiciary. Here you can talk about media. Here you can talk about citizens and other institutions, constitutional, non-constitutional, any it can be. When they try to assert themselves. Against whom? Against the government. Okay. These are the two things. Though how both these things are happening simultaneously, it's not, because one is leading to the other. Because there is democratic backsliding, that is why there is a democratic backlash. Okay, it's not happening in isolation. One thing is leading to the other. Now here you can talk about all these things and give Western examples. Okay, Donald Trump has this tendency of labeling journalists. He humiliates them at times. He throws them out as he asks his security to take them away. Same thing is happening in Europe also. Okay, several countries have seen it. Then reasons why this thing is happening, why this democratic backsliding is happening. Reason is polarization. Polarization on what? On identity lines. Polarization on identity lines. So this can be racial, this can be religious, this can be ethnic, can be anything. Then propaganda. Propaganda as in emergence of a savior tendency. Okay, which is what the popular leaders, the charismatic leaders are trying to do. Cult status. They are trying to achieve cult status and engaging into propaganda. Then a nationalistic resurgence is happening. The rise of right. There is a question on this also. Rise of right in West. See, nationalism in Europe is not a very favorable word. In Western society, nationalism is not a favored word. Any idea why? In India, it may be favorable, not in West. Climate change nahi. Their nationalism resulted into 2 world wars. It devolved into chauvinism, extreme nationalism, my own country, right or wrong. Fascism and Nazism are a direct offshoot of extreme nationalism in West. So that is why the identity, that is why the emergence of EU, that is why this concept of what EU says, pooled sovereignty. Now we are witnessing the wavering of this pooled sovereignty. Okay, this itself is backsliding. So why? Reasons are different. We no need to talk about it here. Again, there is no scope. Now backlash is happening in the form of judicial activism, where judiciary is trying to go for the course correction. Citizen activism, many citizen groups. Okay, the role of citizen activism, and you can talk about the role of NGOs also, civil society and NGOs. Then debates in public. And you can end it by quoting Rajiv Bhargav. He says that democracy is an unfinished project that needs constant vigilance. Okay, it needs constant vigilance, because if you don't, there is a serious repercussion is going to happen. Checks and balances have to be there. Vigilance has to be there by different vigilant groups ranging from state and non-state. Okay. This one you need to, you can give these examples, all of them. Just a caution, don't get carried away and start giving examples from home. That this happened here and there was a democratic backlash. Don't do that. Don't do that. I hope you are mature enough to know what not to write. You don't have the liberty of the newspaper that you read. Okay? You don't have the liberty of the newspaper that you read. I often say this in class. So discuss these things with a pinch of salt. Avoid giving too specific indigenous examples. There will be a backlash in your answer sheet otherwise. UPSC is autonomous, it's not sovereign. Correct? Now this one, again, the weakening of multilaterals, the emergence of the new world order that we are witnessing. Withdrawal of United States of America from the World Trade Organization, the WHO, said to have far-reaching impact on global health. Reimagining the existing WHO is vital for the global. So two parts. First is that far-reaching impacts. And this is the second thing, reimagining the existing WHO. How to do that? So what will happen? The reports are there. It will lead to loss of 15% of funding to WHO. Now, WHO at times has faced resource constraint. Now, this further cut will result into disruptions of programs against AIDS, malaria, TB, all the epidemics and pandemics which WHO fights against. Scaling down of US aid. You know, again, Donald Trump here. See, this is what we are witnessing, an inward-looking US. Okay, what we are witnessing is an inward-looking and uncertain US. So this will have impact on welfare programs. They used to do a lot of things, but we'll not talk about all those things. Only the one which this question is concerned about. Cutting across the world, especially in least developed countries. 46 of them are there. Credibility challenges will be there. Why credibility challenges will be there? Because services will not be delivered promptly and on time. Okay, because there will be some issue when funding is reduced. Risks will be there because we don't know the uncertainty that will arise. Then you can write these things point-wise or in a paragraph also. Stress should be on this topic, reimagining the existing WHO, sorry. So how do we reimagine it? Reform the funding mechanism. How exactly it can be done? How can it be reformed? How WHO gets its money? Mostly from source. Source is UN gives, and then there are several donations which are lined up. But there is no streamlining. So streamlining can happen here. Now governance, this talks about the management. This also needs to be more streamlined. Then improve operational capacity. This is talking about the both fund and personnel both. This thing requires skilled people also. Again, they lack accountability. What they are doing should be made accountable. Transparency in their functioning. Okay, all these points you can elaborate. Now integrate multi-sectoral approach. That WHO and climate change, sustainable development goal, inequality, inclusion, all these things need to be seen as one bigger canvas. Okay, a holistic approach needs to come up. But again, for this you will need more funds and personnel. That is why we have first talked about the reform in the funding mechanism itself. Okay, this way you can write it. And US withdrawal should be seen as an opportunity. Opportunity as to rejuvenate. Okay, other countries can pull up their resources, they can make specific demands for how it needs to be done. These all suggestions you can give here. Now the next thing, transnational actors have qualitatively transformed the world by the way of their fresh insights and actions. Illustrate your answers with suitable example. Now, what are these transnational actors? Transnational and multinational, are they same? So here you can include MNCs, here you can include civil society, here you can include NGOs. Okay. Now, state-centric paradigm, where the sovereign will do the needful. State-centric paradigm. Now this is shifting towards pluralistic international system. Because of this, a pluralistic international system, this is emerging. This is emerging. See, complex, again, Joseph Knight talking about complex interdependence. So that is not limited to sovereign. It is not limited to sovereign states. It can be done through international system of a cluster of transnational actors. Now they tend to impact economic policies. Any example? World Bank on India's reforms. 1991. You know, they had a role to play here. It did not happen only because India needed it, but because there was some element of compulsion also. What else? Domestic policy making, MNCs lobbying to get more access to the local market. And no, don't write this example which I am going to give you, just to substantiate the way in which Pfizer wanted the Indian market and how it roped in certain celebrities who have certain nuisance value to pitch in their vaccines. The government did not bend, that is altogether different story. But see, a giant pharma company, okay, giant pharma company trying to arm twist the state. So they try to impact the policy making, economic policy, each and everything. Then they tend to mobilize opinion. How? How? By what you study in your paper 1. Gramsci talks about discourse. How they have a role here? Not an ideology, a narrative. Ideology is different, a narrative that you need to get up and need to have a certain type of conflicts if you want to stay healthy. This is what discourse is. Okay. So all these examples you can give that they try to capture or shape the discourse. Okay. Then all this big tech, Google, Facebook, you can write X also, which was earlier, raise questions on sovereignty. Just to give an example, when X was still Twitter, I don't know if you know about this, when Elon Musk did not buy Twitter, Trump lost the election, results were declared, and he was having his opinion, which may not be the best opinion, but Twitter deplatformed him. He was still in White House, he was deplatformed. Now in India, cutting across the party line, there were people who were saying that my Twitter account has been suspended, it has been shadow banned. A parliamentary committee summoned the Twitter India CEO. The committee was headed by no less than Shashi Tharoor. The first question he asked that, do you obey Indian laws? What the CEO replied, we obey our algorithms. Now who designs these algorithms? The humans do. These humans have tendency of biasness or not. So now you understand how big tech can shape, can dilute your sovereignty by shaping your opinion. By shaping your, not only shaping opinion, but also controlling your access to information. Okay? It also controls your access to information, whether you will see what you want to see. If it's deplatformed, if something has been uploaded, maybe a video, maybe a document, maybe a presentation, if it is deplatformed, then you cannot see it. So they are going a long way in shaping the discourse by wielding this extraordinary power that they have. Okay. Now challenge to the realist view. How they are challenging the realist view? Because realists attribute these things to sovereign states. It is the governments which take the call. Now even the non-government entities are taking the call. And you can conclude by reflecting that the transnational actors are central to understanding the theme, network and norms. Because you cannot deny them. It's a part and parcel of the system now. This process is irreversible, just like globalization. And they are non-dispensable. Okay, they are indispensable in addressing the concerns that we face, global challenges that are there. The transnational actors also have a role to play. Okay, the role of transnationals has become indispensable amidst the contemporary global challenges. This is how you can conclude both sides, what they are doing, what are the threats that might emerge, and then a neutral type conclusion. Okay, that is what an ideal approach should be, covering almost all the dimensions.
Every UPSC topper has one thing in common: a powerful optional subject that gave them the edge in mains. It's not just syllabus coverage, it's about building depth, precision and scoring power that sets you apart when ranks are decided. That's exactly what the Vision IAS Optional Classroom Program 2026 delivers. Immersive classes for crystal clear concepts, intensive answer writing practice with expert feedback, dedicated mentorship to sharpen focus and strategy, refined study material trusted by toppers year after year. Whether you are starting fresh or aiming for the final breakthrough, this program transforms your optional into your rank booster. With Vision IAS, you never prepare alone. You prepare with the institute trusted by toppers across India. New batches for anthropology, geography, political science and international relations and sociology begins from 18th September. Don't just prepare, dominate mains with your optional. To know more or register, visit our website or call us on the given numbers.
Now the next one. Centrist and center-left political parties have been facing setbacks, while center-right parties have been in ascendancy the world over. Comment. So it's a phenomena which is being witnessed right now, and you are asked to comment on it, which means analyze it the way it is happening. So centrist and center-left political parties have been facing setbacks. So why they have faced, this question is on, yes, the rise of right. The rise of right and nationalism. So both these things are happening simultaneously. See, there is never a vacuum. If you yield space, someone will take it. That is why India has to be there in Afghanistan, even if Taliban is not good. India is the fourth largest donor in Afghanistan. If we are not there because Taliban is whatever it is, we are yielding space to other powers. Central Asian countries are there, Iran is there, China is there, Russia is there, US is there, Pakistan is there. We don't want such a situation on our western borders. Okay, India not being active will yield space to others. As I said, there is never a vacuum. You recede, someone else will come. That someone else go, then someone else again will come. Okay. So what we are witnessing, rise of right and the decline of left. And this left, we are not talking about the Karl Marx and Hegel was an idea, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engel's theory. But this left-centric, left liberal जिसको बोलते हैं, this was done by Bush and Blair. George Bush and Tony Blair, where they funded, nurtured and created these institutions, nurtured them, provided them with a lot of money to create this liberal left-centric world order. Okay, which will talk about inclusion and all the things which left says that they champion about. Equality, inclusion, participation, so on and so forth. Now why it is facing backlash? Because first you see, economic issues have happened. 2008 financial crisis, still West has not recovered from this. So the call for equity, the call for inclusion, the call for plurality, यही सब लेफ्ट बोलता है ना. दे बोलते तो सब हैं, but left presents it at their core agenda, right? Championing the cause of marginalized. So all these things sound good when your economic conditions are good. When you are having plenty, then you will talk about distribution. If your pockets are empty, if you yourself are facing issues, then you will not talk about participation and inclusion. Are you understanding this? So post 2008, that is what has happened in the West. Job losses are there, livelihood losses are there. From what? From immigrants. From their own failure of their government to discharge the functions. So all this is happening one after the other. Okay. Immigrant issue is there. Just last week, more than 1 lakh people have come out with a campaign. They took out a protest march in Britain by the likes of far-right Tommy Robinson. He was in jail for some time. He's out and then leading all these races. So immigrant, one issue is here. Then loss of livelihood opportunities. This is another issue. Okay. 2008 economic crisis, of course, has contributed to it. All these are the factors which has resulted into the collective decline of left. And how right has asserted here? How has right asserted here? Right has capitalized, consolidated on these anxieties. Anxiety of people. And it has gone for entity politics, built around ethnicity, religion, and cultural assertion. That is why we see the rise of right. The likes of Giorgia Meloni are winning again and again. Donald Trump is back in White House, despite claiming what he used to. His manifesto, you see, same thing. MAGA, Make America Great Again. Economic protectionism. Tightening the H-1B visas. Deporting the illegals. Which should be done, but the way he was doing, handcuffed and then military aircrafts were used, all that. So these visuals matter a lot. Okay, then trying to build a wall with Mexico, weakening the NAFTA. Okay, the ties with Mexico, the economic ties. Wilders in there in Netherlands winning. In Britain, Labour Party is in power, but the rise of right is happening. Conservative lost because there was another right-wing party which cut through the votes of Conservative Party. So the collective vote percentage has increased of the right. Are you understanding this thing? Else, other than this, what has happened? Left has of late, globally and in India also, it has not shown any understanding of the priorities of people. Okay, it's still wahi 18th century, 19th century, same class war they are talking about. Now, no one is interested in this class war. Capitalism has reformed itself. Marxism should also. So still bourgeois and proletariat, this is now how the world operates. There are other entities. You need to accept that. Your premise that every change is progressive is not true. A synthesis and antithesis and thesis, something better will emerge. No. Rise of fascism and Nazism in Europe is never a progressive thing. Cannot be labeled as a progressive thing. Okay, are you understanding these things? So that is why left is suffering and their center right is asserting itself. You can write some examples here. CDU. This is the far right in Germany. You can write about Geert Wilders in Netherlands. You can write about Giorgia Meloni in Italy. Okay, these examples you can quote here. Her party is an open supporter of Mussolini. I hope you know this. Unabashedly. And you listen to her translated speeches. You will know all the causes that she stands for. Okay. Plus, they also accuse left of populism. Economic populism. These are the collective things that you can write. Now, next thing, collective security and responsibility to protect two things. One is your collective security, the other is your R2P. Similar but different in scope, goals and methods. So first of all, collective security, this is given by realist thinkers. Realists are the one who talk about this. R2P, what is R2P? This is a pretext used by West to intervene. Okay, it's a pretext used by West or global North to intervene. Now, similar but different in scope, goals and method. So first thing, both claim to preserve peace and protection for the larger good. They talk about that we will prevent any kind of conflict, we will any kind of war, battles, these things will be undone. But how they will be done? Collective security is state-centric, again because realists talk about it. So the military alliances, this is NATO can be an example of collective security. Then you can talk about, it has deterrent. Deterrent objective is there. So if NATO is there, 32 countries are there, act of aggression against one is an act of aggression against all. Okay, so this is what will deter the aggression. Alliances will be built. Now R2P is intervention and sanctions. R2P example you can give. Yes. Which one? Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction. Saddam had, it was alleged, had nothing. Syria, Assad must go, they said, and replaced him with who? ISIS. Jolani, I hope you know who is he, the chief of STS. He was second in command to al-Baghdadi in ISIS. So he is direct Al-Qaeda in Middle East is there. So R2P is intervention, collective security is deterrence. Former has issues. Collective security has its own issue because these alliances are mostly built around power politics and narrow geopolitical considerations. Then what happens? There is UNSC vetoes. 5 countries will shape the outcome. Problem with R2P is that there are 70 concerns. So a certain country feels that there are weapons of mass destruction. Without a UN sanction, they can go and do what it wishes. It is done very arbitrary. There is no method to R2P. That is why backlash again is happening. So under the pretext of R2P, mostly the global north intervenes in the global south in a very arbitrary way. So one protects the state, other claims to protect for the individuals. So democratic backsliding is happening. Assad is autocratic, is what they said, that Assad is suppressing his people. Saddam is suppressing his people. Now after Saddam, Islamic State emerged. Are they not suppressing people? HTS is there. See what is happening to the Shias and the Kurds in Syria. So are they not being suppressed? So that is why this claim that R2P takes for other individuals is not rooted in reality. Now how you conclude this? You can conclude by saying that collective security emphasizes on state and R2P on individuals. Both claim to have same objective, but both have contrasting methods of doing it. And then there is a dispute also, dispute regarding the mechanisms. One is more institutionalized, because here you have the international institutions involved. The other one, R2P, is more state or individual centric, one country deciding everything. You can give these examples of Iraq and Syria here. Okay? Again, you see, all this is happening around us for so many years. R2P being invoked, and how they have compared this with collective security. See, your syllabus nowhere mentions this term. Okay, this term was quite unheard of before Iraq invasion of 2003. 2003, Iraq was invaded on the pretext of this weapons of mass destruction. So then certain analysts and experts started quoting these things, that West has invoked responsibility to protect under this. Now it can be for environment, it can be for people, it can be from gender, it can be from anything. Indigenous rights, they may say. Okay, they will go there, uninstall the government, install a puppet government. Okay, Afghanistan again on the pretext that 9/11 happened. Okay, so these are the different aspects here. Now, moving to the next one, the next question. Global South sensitive model of globalization would prevent the danger emanating from over-centralized globalization. So here you can start with a scholar, Joseph Stiglitz. Heard of him? Stiglitz, his famous book, he's a Nobel laureate. He talks about the discontent of globalization. Globalization and its discontent. He mentions this, and very systematically he has analyzed this, that how globalization tends to favor the global north, the developed countries, at the cost of developing countries. So as a process, it is dominated by global north. How it is dominated by global north? Again, the role of multilateral institutions, especially the Bretton Woods, IMF, World Bank you can talk about, WTO you can talk about, okay, mostly aligned with the global north. Now, Wallstein world system theory you can use to explain the core and periphery. What is this core and periphery thing? Very developed countries. These are the developed countries. And these are developing or underdeveloped. So who stands to benefit from the process of globalization? So Weinstein says it leans in favor of developed countries. That is what Stiglitz also says. Okay. Now we need more equitable and development oriented process over here. So the question, that is what it said, that global south sensitive model of globalization. So what all can come here? What all can come here in global south sensitive model? You can first, you need to highlight the centralized globalization, economic dependence, volatility in the south. It will create disruptions. Disruptions where? In terms of market, resources, okay, for people. Then loss of policy autonomy due to structural adjustment pressure. Again the same arm twisting techniques that are used. Access to market, exploitation of resources, then you can write about the non-consensus oriented method. The non-consensus oriented method which often global north imposes on the likes of global south. Environmental degradation, disproportionality, all these points, cultural homogenization, undermining local entities. Now what is this cultural homogenization? How it is homogenized? Single culture as in the dominant one propagated by the developed countries with absolutely no concern for the local culture. Okay, so here you can also mention about Haywood's McDonaldization. By Andrew Haywood. What Haywood talks about it in McDonaldization process? That your food habits are being changed. Your cultural preferences are being changed. The way you celebrate your festivals are decided by others. What you have to gift. Okay, so your mithais may be having sugar, but their chocolates as if they are sugar free. That's not the case. So hampers will replace the mithai dabba. Okay. Indigenous local snack is bad and McDonald's burger is very healthy, is what you are told, because it's hygienic. So same thing Haywood also talks about, cultural homogeneity. And then you can sum it up by saying that there is this model, the model that we are talking about, the global south sensitive model. This model will require certain corrective measures. And these corrective measures must include the concerns that have been raised by the neoliberal process of globalization, where one country wins at the cost of the other. It needs to embed, you can write this, that it needs to, this model needs to include equity and participation. With the local concerns, not only what other countries are talking about, the developed countries are talking about. All this you can write here. Now, next one, the next question, it's on Latin America. Moderate success in countering US-led global economic reforms, the global economic order by forming various organizations emphasizing regional sovereignty. So Latin America, you see, Latin America was always seen to be under the sphere of influence of USA. USA for a long time has backed dictators over there. Okay, it has created, engineered certain regime change operations over there. And now that Latin America is relatively stable, how it is resisting the American model. So this is what the question is, Latin America's response to the US-led global economic order. Now, you can start with the dependency theory over here. This dependency theory, what all you can include here? The post-colonial sovereignty struggles you can talk about. This one you can include the post-colonial sovereignty struggles. Okay, rich literature is there on this. Then you can also emphasize on the region, this entire region. It's Latin America's attempt to seek autonomy. Okay, attempt to seek autonomy, alternative model of development you can write about, which is more the model which is more local centric. Okay, all this point you can write. Now here you can highlight about certain institutions. You must have heard about the alliances that they have built, the Latin American ones. There is this Mercosur. It's actually an acronym, a Latin American acronym. It means Southern Common Market. English translation is Southern Common Market. Then you have this UNASUR. Again, it's an acronym. You can write these forms. UNASUR stands for Union of South American Nations. Okay. Then you have this CELAC, CELAC. CELAC you can write here. CELAC is your Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. For now, what they all aim? Aim is same. Aim is for more inclusive dialogue with USA, promoting autonomous policy making in Latin America, political coordination, intra-regional trade, fostering more of intra-regional trade is what they emphasize on. Then reduce dependency on USA and others. Because Latin America, again you see, it's a resource-rich region. India itself is trying to revamp its ties, rejuvenate, because these ties were never first really in the place. Latin America and India never used to take Latin America very seriously. It was, we can talk about the three concentric foreign policy circles of India. So the innermost circle is for neighbors. Neighborhood first, Sagar Mahasagar. Second circle is for strategic partners. USA, your Japan, other strategic partners, Western countries, Russia, so on and so forth. Third circle is rest of the world. Now, Latin America has been promoted from third circle to the second circle for India. Why? Because India sees this region as what it calls a Goldilocks zone. See, on one hand, you have Western markets. Economically speaking, on one hand, you have Western markets where competition, is there a demand in Western market for Indian goods? Demand is there. Do they have the capacity to pay the price? Yes. So demand is there, they have pocket money in their pocket, but there are issues. Issues are that the market is very regulated. Then their expectations is sky high. So Indian products find it tough. Tantrums बहुत है उनके. Indian products find it tough to sell. Sell करना आसान नहीं है उधर. See, on the other hand, you have African market. Do you have demand? Demand is there, but they don't have money in their pocket. Purchasing power is very low. Plus, largely absence of rule of law. Okay, coups are very frequent over there. Military unta happens. So, somewhere in between, you have Latin America. Law and order far better than Africa. Quality expectations lower than West. Demand good. Purchasing power not like West, but not as bad as Africa. So India is also focusing on this part, and India will do well if Latin America is able to resist the US temptations in this region. Okay, India-centric part you don't have to write here, just that I'm telling you. Now, all this coordination and infrastructure and connectivity you can write, and lastly, you can conclude this that Latin America as a region, you can write this, that it as a region, it has demonstrated the possibilities because resources are there, inclusive and autonomous participation can happen here. They can participate in the global economy. They can enrich the global governance. They can bring diversity to the multilaterals. Okay, and they can also alter the hegemonic tendencies of certain countries in the multilateral platforms. This is how you can sum up this question. Moving on to the next one. ASEAN plus 3. Now, who are these three? First of all, who are these three? ASEAN plus 3 means China, Japan, and South Korea. This is what is ASEAN group of 10 wonderful countries, right? Southeast Asia, India's regional neighbors. Addressing regional problems, supportive answer with specific examples. Now here you have to provide specific. First of all, how it is doing. So China, Japan, and South Korea and ASEAN is called ASEAN plus 3. You can just write this. Now you can talk about some scholars here. For example, Amitabh Acharya has mentioned about it. Okay, he has talked about, he has given example of ASEAN, that how ASEAN is building a consensus-driven approach. Okay, it is building a consensus-driven approach and using more of summit-level diplomacy. Summit level is informal diplomacy. The protocols are not very strictly enforced there. Informal diplomacy, and further you can write here, second paragraph you can start with, that they are working on their infrastructure and supply chain coordination, especially during COVID thing. COVID ASEAN countries, although India also donated them, but they were doing their things quite wonderfully. Okay, then you can talk about the non-traditional security cooperation, especially to mitigate the impacts of pandemic, to enhance cooperation in disaster management, cyber security, and transnational crime, including the likes of cyber security, online frauds that happen. Now, educational, cultural exchange, and sustainable development. So here you can talk about they have taken a stand on this sustainable development. They have taken a collective stand on haze pollution. ASEAN countries have collectively taken a stand on this because all of them have suffered it. Then there are certain issues. Consensus due to diverse system, it becomes very slow. See, when you rely solely on consensus-driven approach, now multiple countries, then 3 more countries, it takes time to develop consensus. because everyone will have their own agenda. Okay, and at times your agenda might counter someone else's agenda. So come up with something common minimum requires a lot of effort over here. Then you can talk about the enforcement mechanisms. Now, they are largely absent. Why? Because we have said it is more of an informal type of summit. So strict enforcements are missing over here. Then geopolitical rivalries, here you can talk about USA and China. You can talk about actually Philippines, for Prime Minister said, he said then when elephants fight the grass suffers. He's right, US and China are the elephants, countries like Philippines are the grass. Now how will they suffer? Because both of them will try to checkmate each other in the region. Okay, if Singapore is known for its, Singapore is apart, right? It is known for its semiconductor. You know, 10% of world semiconductors are from Singapore. Such a small country, 10% of semiconductor coming from that country. It's a $588 billion industry, semiconductors. But of late, Singapore is facing issues, land, labor issue, and the great rivalry that is unfolding. So world will be impacted by the two giants. Are you getting it? And lastly, you can conclude this by writing that this ASEAN plus 3 approach is a moderate attempt, but it is to an extent it is successful. Successful why? Because it has consolidated the regional cooperation and it has brought more stability in the region. Then it results into, it is attempting, not resulting, but it is attempting to build, you can use these keywords, pragmatic multilateralism. One accusation against multilateralism is that it compromises on the interest of certain countries. That's why we have attached the word pragmatic before it. Pragmatic, entire American policy revolves around this world. Whatever is good for me, I'll do that. Okay, on this note, you can end this. Now the next one, 15, this Trump's return to the White House is a jolt to push the European Union. Now, is it happening? Is Trump in any way threatening EU? See, the current world order that we see, post 1945, okay, post 1945, the current world order that we see is referred as the Anglo-Saxon order led by US, carefully crafted by USA, nurtured by USA. Now what is Trump doing? Under Trump, this is very much evident, USA will no longer be the net security provider of Europe. So this is a stark contrast to what the role of US in the region has been after Second World War. It has often said that this is my area, first world, USA and Western Europe coming together. That will not be like that. So Trump's skepticism towards NATO, what is he's saying that I will pull off the troops. Huge number of US military assets are there in the world. Now he is talking about thinning of these troops. Deployment, underspending on defense. Okay, so NATO deployments will decrease, and here you see rise of, so Europe itself is taking the task. EDF, the European Defense Fund, has increased. Earlier, America used to provide them with lot, now they are doing it for themselves. Collective capabilities, they are trying, see, it is not USA which is trying to console Ukraine, but now it is Britain and France. More than Britain, France and Germany. They are the one who are mostly seen with the likes of Zelensky, not Trump. Okay. So Trump era protectionism and US-China rivalry to EU push for technological sovereignty. So EU's push EU is trying to again find new partners. They are very desperate on a free trade agreement with India. Now Trump is like, I'll do it first. Yes, he's like, I'll finish the race first. Within a year, both these FTAs will happen. Maybe with USA you can have by the end of this year itself. But with EU also, you see repeated visits of EU's head to India. Delegations, exchanges are happening. So EU is also looking for new partners. Okay, the rupture that Trump is causing. Now, Digital Compass 2020, now Trump nationalist stance reinforces multipolarity. Please understand that this word, multipolarity, it challenges American hegemony. Multilateralism contributes to American hegemony through the institutions. Multipolarity, the rise of other countries, other powers will challenge it. Now it is pushing the EU to balance ties with US and China. Okay, balancing ties with US and China. So EU earlier completely under the influence of US, taking a very hard position on China. Now they are not doing so. They are very cautious, and you may see a rapprochement in their approach maybe towards Russia and towards India as well. Okay, and towards India also you can see this. Now what Jafrolet says that EU is trying to pursue an independent foreign policy entity. This independent foreign policy identity will be not influenced by US. See what is happening, this role, the Trump wavering of US. Wavering of USA. Now this is leading to a policy recalibration. Policy recalibration amongst US allies like EU, like Saudi Arabia, like Israel, like India, not an ally, more appropriate term would be strategic partner. Okay, that's why we hear that revival of RIC is on cards. Is it okay? Now you can conclude this by writing that Trump's presidency is one watershed event, and EU is taking its stand. EU was largely dependent on Russia for its oil and gas. Now they have sleepwalked into a giant economic and security crisis because of the stand that they have taken on Russia-Ukraine war. So currently EU is going by its own strategic, deeper defense, economic and technological investment, its own concerns. We can see a more pragmatic effort by the European Union, and a policy recalibration very much on the cards is there. That's how we can sum this. Next question. See, this is section B, the IR part here, the contemporary world politics. Part A is gone, part B is here. China's growing footprint and a tangible shift in power dynamics in Bangladesh has weakened India's leverage in Dhaka. Now this question after the regime change is more appropriate. So see what C. Raja Mohan says. Now you can start this question just by giving a very one-line introduction. You can say that China, yes, China is asserting itself in Bangladesh, which is a cause of concern for India. You can start with the quotation of the scholar here. What is the scholar saying? Assertive outreach erodes India's traditional predominance. Now this dominance was more visible during Hasina's regime. As long as she was the president there, prime minister, it was the condition of the India-Bangladesh ties were best during her regime. Now that does not look so because of the arrival of others. Now economic dimensions. So see this is BRI, Belt and Road, Paira Port, Padma Bridge, all this thing, China is the largest trading partner. China is the largest arms supplier. China at times trains their militaries. Okay, embedding Bangladesh in China's connectivity. So this BRI is making Bangladesh fall in the economic orbit of China. You can write this. Making Bangladesh fall in the economic orbit of China because अभी का डेटा बता देता हूँ $60 billion China has spent in BRI projects in the first half of 2025. So if you see the first half, within 6 months they have spent $60 billion on the projects in BRI. This is again huge. So China is using BRI to convey its point that I am there for you. And these countries take loans, then they fall into the debt trap. Then military strategic cooperation. China has supplied the naval assets, defense equipments, training, strengthening Beijing's role in the Bay of Bengal. See, China wants access to the Indian Ocean. Access to Indian Ocean, and it looks inevitable in the next 10 years. The kind of blocks that they are making, this agreements that they are doing. Now this can happen through Bay of Bengal also. Okay, because it will, both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, they are opening up in the Indian Ocean. So prominent presence there will help them. Then diplomatic outreach. Now again, every country, India's neighbor, they play China card with India. Please understanding. So Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, they effectively hedge between India and China. Okay, they effectively hedge. So hedging between India and China, this again dilutes India's exclusive influence because India cannot offer what China can offer. The capabilities are different. Okay. Then you can implications. What will be the implication? Erosion of India's historic advantage. Now again, you can quote scholar Sumit Ganguly that India must shift from reliance on soft power. So this soft power is your 1971. First of all, we need to now not get rid but tone it down. India-Bangladesh relations cannot be all about 1971. C. Raja Mohan says this. This may sound a bit harsh, but Raja Mohan is right that our relations cannot, India's never will have politics of their own on which India has no control. So stop romanticizing 1971. Bangladesh currently is lot divided on the interpretation of its own history. Now Sheikh Hasina's version on 1971 is same as India's version. That may be the real version. But currently, you cannot finally decide what they will talk about and how they will manipulate it. So start goodwill to strategic investment, infrastructure, security partnership, talk about these things. If needed, reach out to your Arab friends, Saudi Arabia and UAE. Bring new economic lifelines. New economic lifelines for Bangladesh. Talk to your Western friends. Reach out to France, reach out to UK, reach out to South Korea here, not Western exactly, and try limiting the violence against minorities in Bangladesh. Through Arab worlds, revive the economy of Bangladesh, which was doing quite well during Sheikh Hasina's regime, but after COVID, the economy plunged. Then you can talk about the China's expanding presence has dimensions, and India has leverage, but that is quite low because you see India shares more than 4,000 kilometer long boundary. So the reality of geography will always be there. Okay, with Bangladesh this will always be there. You can conclude this by writing that China has expanded its presence. Okay, it has expanded presence and it has diminished India's leverage. This is for sure. That's why we need a course correction. Now India needs to recalibrate its neighborhood first policy. How? Multi-dimensional engagement, not only about soft power, building tangible projects without seen as a big brother. Okay, something which benefits the both country. Growing, now this question is again reflective of what we are witnessing, the growing great power competition in the Asia between India and China, and this will have impact on India's strategic autonomy and stability in overall region. So all this you can use to conclude. Now the next question, would you agree with the contention that India's intention to lean on a more aggressive hyper-realist posture has gained a new momentum in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terrorist strike? Now, the posture that India has adopted, this is something new. It is often referred as policy of graded escalation. What is this policy of graded escalation? See, 1999 Kargil war. That was not a non-conventional attack, that was a military assertiveness. So Indian military did the needful. 2001 Indian parliament was attacked. What India did? Nothing. Just mobilized its troops. Mumbai attack? Nothing. Then the first surgical strike after Uri. Then the air strike after Balakot. Pulwama? Yes, Pulwama. Then after Pahalgam, see, the extent of Operation Sindoor increases the previous operations in both intensity and operations. India reaching to the likes of Muridke and Bahawalpur, more than 100 kilometers from Lahore. So what India has said here, that your non-conventional, please understand this thing, any non-conventional aggression will invite India's conventional response. This is your military. And this non-conventional is done through non-state actors. Okay? So any terrorist attack will have what? A military response. Now this is the change in the lexicon, the parlance of diplomacy that India is using here. Okay, that is what this question is. A hyper-realist posture. New momentum. So credible deterrence. Credible deterrence means there will be repercussions. And you cannot hide under the wheel that there is a distinction between non-conventional and conventional. Earlier Pakistan used to say that we are not involved, the non-state actors are involved. But we sympathize with these non-state actors. We don't justify what they are doing, but they sympathize, and India cannot use its conventional response. Why? Because we are a nuclear power. Operation Sindoor has called both this bluff. Okay, you may be a nuclear power, but we are coming for you. Then military assertiveness India has displayed. What else it has done? Diplomatic posturing. See this, the way in which this all-party delegation was sent to various countries led by people cutting across the party lines, some of them vocal critique of the Modi government. They were part of it and they did articulate a position in alignment with the government's policy. Okay. So this thing is happening. Then internal securitization. What is this internal thing? Stronger intelligence coordination, rapid response mechanism, and stricter laws for internal security, because terrorists intend to widen these internal fault lines. Then you see what Chomsky talks about, Noam Chomsky, famous book he has written, Manufacturing Consent. What he says that states are under asymmetric threats. States which are under asymmetric threats are using more of hard power. So understand the words that Chomsky is using. Asymmetrical threat, recalibrating towards hard power. Now what is asymmetrical threat? Have you ever fought anyone? किससे लड़े हो? What is the first thing that you see when you fight someone? Infrastructure of that person. This is the first thing you see. And then you make an assessment whether I should poke this person or not. Haso mat, that's right? Asymmetry is when your strength and your rival strength is drastically different. What will you do? Indian military and Pakistan military, you know the asymmetry, and they also know it very well. But the likes of Lashkar and Jaish, they are using proxy war. This is asymmetrical warfare. Asymmetrical warfare has no deterrence. Pakistan's military has deterrence of Indian military. Lashkar and Jaish don't have. Palestine's military may be scared of the Israel Defense Forces. The Hezbollah and Hamas are not. Because the warfare is asymmetrical, what happens there? Deterrence goes for a walk. Now, how to establish that deterrence? This is what Chomsky talks about, by displaying more of hard power. Military acts. Same thing India has done. Now, Fareed Zakaria, heard of him? Columnist, anchor, presenter. Currently he's with CNN, right? So he has given some very sharp insights, and what he says, Zakaria says, that over-militarization should be avoided. Why it should be avoided? Because he stresses that diplomacy and socio-political engagement are important. He says a risk is there. If you engage into display of hard power, the other side will also do the same. So instead of mitigating the conflict will accelerate, it will exaggerate. So he stresses on more of socio-political engagement, more of diplomatic engagement. Then India's post-Pahalgam hyper-realist tilt is both perceptible and pragmatic. Why? Because India has been a victim of terror for a very long time. Okay, so now it has taken the matters into its own hand, trying to establish this as the new normal. What is the new normal? That any sub-conventional or non-conventional act of aggression from Pakistan will invite a conventional response from India. This is the new normal. Okay? And what you need here is a same thing, calibrated blend of deterrence, diplomacy and political. So what was to be done in Operation Sindoor was done. Then diplomatically an all-party delegation was sent. Now again you understand, this time India did not feel the need to furnish evidences. Did it do that? इस पर किया क्या? After Mumbai attack, we invited the Pakistani team. Do you know this? To jointly investigate. They did investigate. They went back and said, India did it. India is the one who done that for blaming us. After Uri also, we invited them in 2015-16. Again, they said the same thing. So now all these things are things of past. India is not furnishing any evidence. The team, the all-party delegation was not giving evidence. They were just stating India's position. Okay, without offering any drafts or documents or anything related to it. Okay, this is how you can conclude this. Coming on to the next one. Multipolar world order also means multipolar Asia. So here you can write about multipolar world. Multipolar world, again I told you, multipolarity is a challenge to American hegemony. Multilateralism aids to it. Now, Brahmachalani, what Brahmachalani says, his comment is that China wants what? A bipolar world and a unipolar Asia. India wants a bipolar Asia and a multipolar world. Okay, this is the contrast of the two countries, contrast in the approach of the two countries. His quote, you can write that multipolar world and bipolar Asia. Who wants this? India. China says bipolar world and unipolar Asia. Okay. Now, next thing you can add here, that you can also quote Professor Pant, Harsh V. Pant, that multipolarity is a reaction to the decline of unipolar or bipolar world orders. So, how it has emerged? Because there has been a decline in unipolar. Unipolar world order was 1991 to 1999. Bipolar was before that, 1945 to 1991. From 1999, the next pole has started to emerge. The China has started to emerge as the second pole after a unipolar world. Today, multipolarity is upon us. The world is more multipolar here. Now, India's shift. Now, see what India is doing. From non-alignment, it has moved to multi-alignment. So, part of Quad, part of BRICS, working closely with USA in Indo-Pacific, working closely with the rivals in SCO, working closely in connectivity projects like IMEC and minilaterals like I2U2, working closely in INSTC also with likes of Russia and Iran, both of them who are sanctioned by US. This is multipolarity at work. You can use these examples. Then India's vision for Asia. Vision for Asia is what? What Brahmacharani says. What it says? What he says, that it wants a bipolar Asia, stable, equitable one. Then hurdles in realizing multipolar Asia. What are the hurdles? The first hurdle is China. Because China does not want a bipolar Asia. China wants a unipolar Asia. So that is the first thing which India needs to overcome. And the regional rivalries. See, Asia remains a divided house. Okay, Asia remains a divided house. China is there, Japan is there, India is there, Pakistan is there. Okay, and when you see South Asia, the term regional is missing. Though it's a regional bloc, SAARC and all, but there is no regional approach. It is the least integrated zone. There are unsettled boundary disputes. There are disputes over resource sharing. Okay, so all these act as a hindrance, okay, in Indian attempt. Now, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has talked about balance over alliances. Wonderful thing he has said, that how India's approach to multipolarity balances the engagement with regional powers and simultaneously also safeguards sovereign interest. What is Foreign Minister saying? That this concept, balance over alliances, this is India's approach to multipolarity. And what it does, it balances all the engagements with regional powers, maybe in different parts of the world, safeguarding its own interest. Now, you can conclude this, that India's approach to multipolarity is both strategic and practical. Why? Because world is multipolar, so the policy has to be based on multipolarity. Then you can also write here that India has realized and is practicing the importance of a balanced, a very inclusive regional order to avoid any kind of confrontation with a country and consolidate on its peace and prosperity efforts in Asia. See, earlier, here you can end your answer, but you must know this, that under non-alignment, India was practicing a more idealist foreign policy. Under idealist foreign policy, your inner connotations, that if you talk about these are the things which are important to me. India is opposing racism, India is opposing colonialism, against imperialism. then the other country must also do the same. Only then there is a scope for cooperation. In multipolarity, that might not happen. It is done under realist foreign policy. Despite 10 differences, we can collaborate on the 11th issue. So India and China have unsettled boundary dispute, but last fiscal year, India-China did more than $127 billion trade, bilateral trade I'm talking about. There may be different perception regarding Tibet, but there will be participation in formats like BRICS and SCO. So you understand how realism works here and how idealism used to work there back then. How from non-alignment India has moved to multi-alignment. Again, this is your PYQ 2024. This question came in your optional itself. Coming to the next one. Next question. Non-alignment movement have any future in the wake of India's growing indifference towards it? So what do you think? Is non-alignment relevant now? Is NAM relevant? You have to show how relevant it is. You may think it is irrelevant. See, when UPSC says, what are your views? Don't give your views. Okay, don't give your unfiltered views. Give your qualified views. So what are we supposed to write here? First thing, it's a product of its time. Product of its times mean Cold War era. Then it was important. Okay, then it was important. Why? Because India wanted to preserve its strategic autonomy. Okay, in a bipolar Cold War arena. Now, you can talk about what Kanti Bajpayee has written. His assertion was that NAM was not an entrenched ideology, but it was a response to a historical context. NAM, not an entrenched ideology, but a response to historical context. Historical context is the Cold War here. Very right, this. Okay. Now currently what India is doing, it is focusing on multi-alignment. How it is focusing on multi-alignment? It has its own strategic autonomy at place. So purchasing oil from Russia, still engaging with USA. Criticizing Israel in UNSC when France and Saudi, you know this thing that happened last week? The 142 countries voted against Israel, including India. Of course, 10 countries voted in favor of Israel, including US, so nothing could happen. This was regarding the attack on Qatar. So this is the most decisive criticism India has done up against Israel in the past, I think, 10, 11 years after Modi government. Again, an indirect one. Okay, it has not named. PMO wrote a tweet against Israel attack on Qatar, but it did not mention the name of Israel. Okay, so again, this is multipolarity. And here you can see the critique of NAM. Okay, what was the critique? NAM was ineffective. Ineffective in what? It was never able to act cohesively. You had people like Iraq and Iran both were there. Sukarno from Indonesia was there. Saddam Hussein was there. This Yasser Arafat was there. Other Arab countries were there. Now they had their own set of issues. Okay, they had their own set of issues. So there was no emerging consensus. And they did not adapt to the changing world order. When Cold War is over, NAM should have revamped itself. That did not happen. Okay. It did not deliver any significant result when founder member India was concerned. There was no stand, absolutely no stand of NAM during 1962 war with China, 1971 war with Pakistan. So why you expect India to cling on that with albatross hung around its neck? Okay. Now, relevance you can trace that NAM has metamorphized into Global South. And Indian foreign policy champions the cause of the Global South. Now, NAM needs to focus on these things like green and clean energy, okay, technology transfer, trade, global health, mitigating the climate change, providing access to education and quality health care to these countries, the Global South countries. That is how NAM will remain relevant. And you can conclude this by writing that NAM currently is not so relevant, okay, but because it has not taken any stand on issues that matter in the Global South. So it needs to rake these issues very often. It needs to talk about this issue, and India is itself practicing a recalibration of its foreign policy. It is more leaning towards realism, towards pragmatism. It practices multi-alignment. NAM can be of relevant there if there is a transformation within NAM itself. Okay, on this note you can conclude this.
Ever felt that despite studying hard, you are not sure if you're focusing on the topics that really matter for UPSC Mains 2026? Many aspirants spend months revising the same basics, but the exam demands depth, analysis and interlinkages, not just coverage. That's why Vision IAS has designed a 3-month intensive Mains Advanced Course 2026. This program handpicks the most crucial static portions, dives deep into complex analytical areas, and integrates current affairs with Mains 365, ensuring that nothing essential is left uncovered. With sectional mini test, interactive classes you can revisit anytime, and dedicated mentor support, this course transforms your preparation into a Mains focused strategy. The course begins on 8th October at 2 p.m. and is available offline in Delhi and online for students across the nation. Take this opportunity to not just prepare for UPSC Mains 2026, master the topics that matter most. To register, visit our website or call us on the given numbers.
Next question you see, historical ties between India and Japan. Now, Japan has remained important for India. Japan is a country with which India never had any dispute, no historical dispute. Both countries have never been adversaries. Now, 2014, again, two head of the states, they are the one PM, ex-PM, Shinzo Abe, and PM Modi. They are the one who delivered this, and it was at the behest of PM Shinzo Abe. He was assassinated in a rather unfortunate way, that this context, this nomenclature of Indo-Pacific emerged. Earlier it was Asia-Pacific. First time Shinzo Abe said that it should be Indo-Pacific. Now institutionalized annual summits are happening, okay. Then we are witnessing more of defense dialogues, and you have this joint military exercises, joint defense exercises you can write. Japan is a country which has a self-defense force. So Malabar, this is the naval, Dharmagaji and Jimex and all. Then shared vision for Indo-Pacific. So I told you, it was Shinzo Abe who coined this term for the first time. It was his idea, centrality of India in these water bodies. Okay, now Japan has its FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, and India's Indo-Pacific Oceanship both tend to merge. There are less points of divergence, there are more points where the interests of both these countries are merging. Now, new agreements you see. There are new agreements happening in the field of clean energy, technology-driven things. Both India and Japan are taking initiatives in Africa, building connectivity projects in Africa. Okay, Japan needs rare earth, China is sitting on it, not giving it, so they can take some from India. Japan, after the advent of Trump, is itself trying to recalibrate the foreign policy because they might face the music from White House, so they are trying to reach out to India. All these developments are very much on the card. Now what Raja Mohan writes, that this partnership reflects a pragmatic adaptation to the evolving dynamics of Asian geopolitics. Now here you can give certain references, one-line reference of China's rise in the region and the importance of multilateral rule making. This thing you can write here. And the role of all these regional initiatives, the infrastructure initiatives which India and Japan jointly intend to develop. After that, you can sum this, last paragraph you can write that India-Japan ties are more than just bilateral strategic alliances. It represents more of a redefinition of bilateral partnership, where both countries have accepted that our interests align with each other. Okay, most of the interests align, democratic values are there, historical bonds are there. Both countries, I told you, have never been adversary at any point of time in history, and a shared vision for the emerging world order both countries have. The only issue is India's proximity with Russia. Only issue is India's proximity with Russia, because Japan fears what Russia and China say, that our alliance is without limits. Now, Russian attack on Ukraine and China's aggressive moves on Taiwan is creating anxiety in Japan. Japan is revamping its security policy. Japan wants more weapons. Now, US is under treaty obligation not to deploy any type of ICBM in Asia. There is just one country which can help Japan with ICBM. Which is that country? Orcon. Only India can do that. So you see the interests being aligned here. How the interests are being aligned. This you can end the last part. Now, this question, again, it's a theoretical one, but it requires application. See, different phases. So first phase you can write here is referred as era of optimistic non-alignment. This is 47 to 62. Now listen carefully. What was India's emphasis here? India's emphasis was on resisting the constraints on its choices. And consolidating its sovereignty. Because you see, the situation was quite desperate back then. Okay, there were liberation movements. NSCN declared independence on 14th August 1947. They wanted a Nagalim. Okay. The parts of India as you see today, some of them wanted independence. You know the story of Hyderabad, Junagadh, Travancore. Same thing we are seeing here. This was India's first preference, that we need to consolidate our sovereignty. Then India was emphasizing on third world solidarity. You can write about the Bandung Conference. You can write about the Bandung Conference, Indonesia, where India invited all these newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. Okay. Then, how it further showed third world solidarity? It opposed US Nita. It opposed Israel, France, and UK invasion on whom? Egypt. For what? Yes, Suez Canal. It opposed USA attack on Vietnam. Okay, see, idealist foreign policy opposed to racism, colonialism, and any form of neo-imperialism. Right? Interestingly, same year, this is 1956, USSR invaded Hungary. India kept silent. Again, India was strategically autonomous even then. It's not new. तभी तो एक को कर रहे हैं दूसरे को नहीं करने. Aggression is aggression, right? Now the war with China, 1962 war with China will end this phase. Okay, this is the first phase. You can write good points here. See, it is 15 plus 5. So first question, 2 parts are here. Second part says, do you think S. Jaishankar's classification of the current phase as the phase of energetic diplomacy? That we will see. First phase you all understood. Second phase here is the era of realism and recovery. This is the second phase. It starts from 1962, lasts till 1971. Now, war has happened. India has been badly bruised and defeated by the Chinese. So now the reality will dawn upon India in a rather shocking way. No Arab country came to your help. No third, no Africa, no one came. Because no one cared. The realization was that we need to stand up for ourselves. We need to have expectation from ourselves, not from others. So now India will look beyond NAM. India will look beyond NAM for its security. Imagine depending on NAM for security. ये बचाएंगे आपको? ये खुद को बचा सकते हैं? And it will sign a security arrangement, security agreement, not many people know about this, with USA in 1964. Okay? This happened. What else India did? See, there was political tentativeness. Why? Because you see, the first 1967 Congress will lose election in 8 states, coalition governments will emerge. Professor Rajni Kothari has used the term era of one-party dominance. That will get over. So you see, type of government and the stability of government have a bearing on the foreign policy of a country. So political tentativeness, then resource constraint always there. Socialism में पैसा कहाँ से आएगा? So you will always be under resource constraint, that's a fact. Then you will witness the mini separatist movement emerging. Mini separatist movements. So Naxal body will happen, 1967. Northeast insurgency will start to come up. This is the second phase. Again issues will be here. Third phase. Greater Indian regional assertion. What all will happen here? Liberation of Bangladesh. Operation Cactus. कहाँ हुआ था ये? Maldives. India sent its forces to, this is 1988, save the president here. Then, this was not to be done, but right, it हुआ तो है ही. IPKF, Sri Lanka, although it was a misadventure. Now, were these things थिंकेबल 20 years बैक? 3 जगह आपने कंट्री में भेज दिया अपनी फोर्सेस को. नाउ even during Nehruvian era, was it possible? Was not possible. So that's what is Greater India Regional Assertion. India is ending a false equivalence with Pakistan. There is nothing common. We are not same. We can come and break you into two. So how come we are same? Okay, the capabilities are different. Okay, regional assertion. So India now is flexing the muscle. Where in the region? Okay, it is flexing the muscle in the region. See the 3 examples that we have quoted here. Right? Now you see the next one. Now the world will become unipolar. In one previous answer, we have also seen this unipolar world order. Now India requires a radical rethinking on its foreign policy. What it will do? It will reach out to the lone superpower more extensively. To whom? You know the lone superpower? USA. India will adjust the position on USA's client state in West Asia. Which country? अब इंडिया का बहुत अच्छा दोस्त है. Israel. Consulate General in Bombay will be opened. It will be upgraded to an embassy. 1956 Suez Canal. India cancelled all diplomatic ties with Israel to open it up in 1992. Then Look East policy will happen. Southeast Asian engagement. See, you need new friends, new partners, new trading and security partners. Okay. Before this, IR was very easy. Only USSR, now you see, every other country is there. There are different divisions in MEA. Central Asia के लिए अलग है, West Asia के लिए अलग है. Okay. Then nuclear weapons. Buddha smiled in 1998. And now what will happen? The dividends of the 91 economic reform will start to be witnessed here. Okay, जेब में पैसा आने लग गया. So world will realize that it makes sense to engage with India. Okay, and this will coincide with the next phase. This one, all of you, if you have noted it. Now the second phase is emerging. Second pole is emerging, and India will have a balancing role. Second pole कौन है? Second pole after a unipolar world, China. Okay. Now India is needed to balance China. But India will strike agreements with China also. On what? Trade and climate change. क्या ना? You know, China $127 billion last fiscal, I told you. Climate change, both countries are in same CBFR, CBDR. China says I'll be net carbon neutral by 2060. India says 2070. Europe is saying no, both of you do it by 2050. एक 10 साल बढ़ा रहा है, दूसरा 20 साल. So both say no, We have our own commitments. Then nuclear deal. With whom? USA, 2006. And this despite not signing NPT. Less than 10 years before, USA put India under sanctions, 1998. 2006 it does a deal. And India will reach out to the old friend. Who? That we have not abandoned you. Treaty will be signed in the year 2000. So this is what? This is an era of opportunity for India. Correct? It's a very good phase. That's why I am summing it up by writing era of opportunity. Now the current one. And this current one needs to be answered with the next question that is there. Energetic diplomacy. So this is 2000. This is 2014 onwards. Yes, this is what is written in your question. Era of energetic diplomacy. How India is taking, see this. This is the last phase, the current phase. The sixth phase, I think, sixth phase is you have written. So why it is called the era of energetic diplomacy? Because India here is taking domestic decisions, domestic political decisions. Domestic political decisions with international repercussions. Give me an example. No, not exact stand on Israel. Abrogation of 370. No major country opposed India. Now don't say Turkey opposed. Who cares for Turkey? Saudis and UAE matters in Arab world. Other than that, Israel matters. USA said nothing. Saudi said nothing. UAE said nothing. Russia said nothing. UK, France said nothing. और कौन matter करता है? Japan said nothing. China did a token criticism because they had to do it. Now you will say Pakistan criticized. तो उनका तो बनता है. Okay. No major country. Now imagine if this was the pocket, deep pocket India had, which it had in 2019. Same pocket India had in 1998. When Pokhran explosion were done by Vajpayee, no sanctions would be coming. Okay, so today geoeconomics largely shapes the geopolitics. Please understand it. That is what it boils down to. Okay, and what we are witnessing a world in state of flux. Now this world in state of flux creates opportunities. And this energetic diplomacy is evident from India's multi-alignment approach. And here you can emphasize that India has made common grounds with different blocks. You can give these examples very easily. Okay, India is dehyphenating it. So this requires engagement. Okay, this requires engagement. India is reaching out to regions. Earlier it has no presence. Like Central Asia, like Latin America. That is why क्या बोला जाता है इसको? एनर्जेटिक डिप्लोमेसी. डॉक्टर ये सब जयशंकर जी की स्पीच से ही है, ये क्वेश्चन उनके स्पीच से आया है. Okay. Got the answer? Let's quickly see the other questions. Some of them are left, not all. India maintains strong ties with countries that will assure a free and open Indo-Pacific and guarantee greater connectivity with rest of the world. Now what you have to write here? Here you can start with PM Narendra Modi's Indo-Pacific as a region where values, connectivity and cooperation, they all tend to merge. Okay, that is what he said, that all these things tend to merge in Indo-Pacific. And Indo-Pacific itself is a single integrated command. Okay, focus is on what? Focus is on regional integration and economic growth both. Now, you can quote these examples, connectivity examples, INSTC, this BCIM, this IMEC. Okay, strategic partnership with the likes of Japan, EU and ASEAN. Okay, reaching out to them. You can highlight India's Sagar and the recent one, Mahasagar. Doctrines. Okay, this also you can highlight here. You can highlight India's emergence as net security provider in IOR. This also you can write. What are the issues here? What are the issues in this approach? First issue is that there are bureaucratic inefficiencies and strategic mistrust. Because when you talk about such a strong and a vast outreach, geographical outreach, of course there will be mistrust and inefficiency because different countries have their different formats, different way of doing things. Then what Professor Harsh Pant is saying, that India's partnerships are vital in ensuring regional stability and maximizing economic opportunities. And he also says that Professor Pant only is saying that in India's neighborhood, India has to often balance its domestic sensitivities and strategic ties. Now China faces nothing like this. China faces no such dilemma. Okay, so in Sri Lanka, India has to consider the Tamil question. Now there is no such question for China. Tamil question is India's domestic sensitivity and prominence in IOR cannot happen without Sri Lanka. Now China sees just one thing, and the same concern India has in almost all its neighbors. Okay, so you can conclude it that India's focus on connectivity is not only extending and is palpable in its maritime zone, but also it reaches what is called the continental crossroads. Okay, helping create a more multipolar and interconnected world. All this you can write in the conclusion. Next point, tariff threat have pushed India and EU closer, as we were discussing earlier. The tariff threat, India-EU relation within the geopolitical and economic context. See these trade challenges, the tariff that President Trump is putting. Okay, this is resulting into recalibration of India and EU ties. We have seen repeated visits by European Union delegation to India this year. Last year you check their statements. They were raising issues about democratic backsliding happening in India, human rights being violated. How the tones have undergone a change? You understand the compulsion of Europe? So that is very much visible. Now see the amount of trade that has happened. This is good. Anything above 100 billion for bilateral trade is very good. Okay. With Russia, EU trade has dipped beyond 100 billion. It was Russia-China trade, just to give you a comparative analysis. Russia-China trade is more than 200 billion last fiscal. So India is catching up here. Now these tariff threats, you can discuss this, that this tariff threat has, because of India's ties with Russia, tariff threat for India, tariff threat for EU also. So both of these regions are coming together. India and EU are coming together, and EU has engaged with India more constructively compared to USA. This tenure of Donald Trump, he is behaving like any other American president. Just that he's a bit more motor mouth. In his first tenure, he was not like that. That is why Modi government was delighted when he won the second term. The ties, John Mearsheimer, Professor John Mearsheimer still says that the ties between Modi administration and Trump administration are very good. But he's playing hardball with India, using tariff as a leverage. This will not work, because their world is multipolar. It's not unipolar as they are thinking. This is not 1990s. And here you can also talk about these themes, that how India-EU relationship, it transcends mere economic ties. There is a common value system that flows, and there you can talk about democracy and respect for rule of law and human rights, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, there are certain issues. What are these issues? Issues are technical issues related to the standardization of tariff. Okay, these things. And there are sensitive products, alcohol, automobiles, plus India's concern on agriculture and dairy. Carbon tariff is there, which is very highly valuable to Europeans. Okay. Then you require political will for the market access. Okay, service liberalization is required. All these things you can sum up, and then conclusion you can write that India-EU partnership requires a more nuanced approach. Both sides have realized that they need each other in a world which is witnessing multiple flux. Okay, things are changing very rapidly. So finalization will happen, and it will happen this year. This will deepen the trade, investment and strategic cooperation between two regions. On this note, you can finish it. See the next question. India continues to invoke its time-tested policy of strategic autonomy vis-a-vis the US and Russia by rejecting US offer of mediation of Kashmir issue and by refusing. See, two things are here. First, India's partnership with Russia. Second, India's refusal to accept US as a mediator. 20 times Donald said this. More than 20 times Donald said that I am the one who stopped the war. One rebuttal came from MEA, one from PM speaking in parliament. Not 20 rebuttals. Okay. So how do you answer this? First, policy of strategic autonomy. Little you think to write one line on what is strategic autonomy. There are two components, you can sum it up. One, that country takes actions based on its national interest. First component of strategic autonomy is countries take action based on its national interest. Second component is that it has the resources and willingness to take such actions. These are the two, irrespective of pressure from other countries. So first, taking action based on national interest. Second, willingness and resources to take such action irrespective of pulls and pressures from the other countries. This is what makes strategic autonomy. Okay. Now India's position, come to the question that how it has taken, continues to invoke. So what India said, India has maintained a neutral stance in Russia-Ukraine war. India did not criticize Russia. India said sovereignty must be respected, which is a very indirect criticism of Russia, please understand. G20 summit, you know, Russia-Ukraine conflict was pushed to 67th paragraph of the document. Are you aware of it? 67th paragraph without naming Russia. India could do that. Biden said when he was president, he said that attack on Russia is an attack on free world. India does not subscribe to this statement, which makes this statement very light. What kind of attack on free world it is when the world's largest democracy is not even endorsing it? Okay. So India made very reasonable calculations here. See, there was no possibility of Russia being defeated. किसी को लगता है कि यूक्रेन हरा देगा? Even with full deployment of NATO. If NATO is there, Russia will not go alone. Russia को भी कि कोई आ जाएगा. You know who. So the possibility of Russia being defeated was impossible. India made reasonable calculations, unlike the Western countries, which have sleepwalked into giant economic and security crisis. India used this conflict to source cheap oil because Russia was scrambling for new markets. And see, in principle, what India has done. In principle, what it has done, just one extra thing I'll tell you, and you can use this in your answers. On Russia-Ukraine. Did not buy the Western narrative on war, right? Did not abandon Russia. See, Russia is too important an ally, please understand. For these three reasons. Defense, Vivek Shringla, Mr. Harshvir Shringla, who is he? He was our foreign secretary. Today he is a nominated Rajya Sabha member. 12 presidential nominee, one is Mr. Harshvir Shringla. He said, without Russia, our ships will not sail, our planes will not fly. Close to 60% of India's defense inventory still comes from Russia. And that too when we have diversified, US, Israel, France, तब भी सबसे ज़्यादा कहाँ से आ रहा है? Russia. So Russia is important. Then third, what it did? Aligned with the global south by opposing war in principle. Right? And lastly, did not majorly upset the ties with West. This is called strategic autonomy. Sabka saath. Okay. This is called strategic autonomy. And there will be costs. There will be costs if a country like India pursues strategic autonomy. See, India's rise is not being liked by friends and foes alike. Because IR is very status quoist. Anything which is status quoist is favored by the privileged. So India's rise is disrupting the status quoist nature of international relations. So of course it will be resisted. Okay. Now, returning where it was. Yes, thank you. So India has procured this S-400. Now US threatened with, you know what? CAATSA. Interestingly, you know, CAATSA, all of you know, the American law, what is that? Countering American adversaries against through Trade Sanctions Act. CAATSA threat was there. Turkey purchased S-400. Turkey was sanctioned with CAATSA. Turkey is a NATO member. India is not a NATO member. Okay. Energy security, 60% currently our oil coming from Russia. Okay. But India also continues to engage with US. With no country, India has 7 military ties, 7 military agreements. Not even with Russia, not with Israel, not with France, only with US. Okay, more than 50 bilateral agreements are there between two countries involving many state agencies from both countries. $131 billion bilateral trade last year, India's highest trade. FTA about to be signed, and Donald is like, do it before you do it with EU. He wants to reach the finish line first. Okay. Then India has rejection US mediation and its neutrality on, see why it has, because India traditionally said this is my issue, no country will sort it out. Trump has tried to internationalize Kashmir, which is straight going into the terrorist narrative. They are the one who always said, they are the one who will invite everyone. Pakistan has always tried to internationalize Kashmir. Right? Bring the Scandinavian countries, bring the Soviets, bring the Russians, bring the Americans, bring the Arabs. India said this is what Shimla and Tashkent is all about. Yes, Tashkent also. That any conflict will be sorted bilaterally. Panchayat nahi bulai jayegi. It is my issue, we will sort it. India sees it as an internal problem. Trump is trying to internationalize. He is trying to rehyphenate India and Pakistan in the global imagination. See, it started with President Clinton. One extra information, you can use this in answer. 1999 visit of President Clinton, dehyphenation of India-Pakistan policy by USA. Clinton did not return to US via Pakistan. Earlier, the Western countries, they used to come to India, they will return via Pakistan. Balancing. Rehyphenation. Clinton is the first American president who did not do so. He halted in Islamabad. He did not step out of the plane. Halt happened. He did not touch the Pakistani soil. He flew back. Since then, no American president has tried to do this. Donald is an exception. He is trying to rehyphenate India-Pakistan in the geopolitics, which is a major issue for India. Got it? Yeah, calling Asim Munir and serving him deluxe thali, not once but twice. It is very unlikely for American president to host military generals. You see this hedging happening here? So here you can conclude, you can write about C. Raja Mohan. C. Raja Mohan has said that Indian foreign policy is not about choosing camps, but shaping the multipolar order on its own terms. This is C. Raja Mohan. I repeat, Indian foreign policy is not about choosing camps, but shaping the multipolar order on its own term. Next question. 3-4 are left. We will quickly try to wind it up. Now see what it says. Trump unilateral position of racism. So Trump has been the major. This attention is on Trump, because what US does will have repercussions, and what he's doing things in a very arbitrary way. So of course PSIR optional will have reflections of it. So imposition of reciprocal tariff on scores of countries pose impending threat to the future of rule-based multilateral global trading under the WTO. Now here, earlier same question on WHO. See, Trump is weakening the multilaterals, and the world may fall into what is called Kinderberger trap. Heard of this trap? So quickly listen for a minute. Superpower and the emerging superpower. There is something called global goods and services. Our country, our government provides us with indigenous goods and services. We have access to law and order, transportation, so on and so forth, security. Kaun provide karta hai? Government does. So sovereign countries, sovereign governments provide it to their people. Global public goods, deployment of peacekeeping forces in UN. Open waters in the exclusive after the EEZ stops. Navigation, freedom of navigation into open waters. Okay, when a pandemic comes, who is the one who will deploy the superpowers to these things? So when USA is receding and China is ascending, USA will not provide resources for these existing world order. That is why you see all this happening. UNESCO से भी withdraw किया, WHO से भी withdraw किया. USA position on EU is rather complex right now. Okay, WTO is suffering because of what US is doing. So multilaterals will weaken. Existing global order will weaken. Why? Because US will not deploy resources. China will not be inclined to deploy resources. Why? Why should China deploy its resources for a US-led world order? China will create its own world order. Revisionist है तो अपना establish करेगा ना? Are you getting it? Same thing happened in the decades of 30s. UK was receding, US was ascending. This transition is never favorable for the world. Why? Because the receding superpower refuses to deploy resources. The ascending superpower is not inclined to deploy. What we witness is utter chaos. See what happened in the decades of 30s. Genocides, emergence of Nazism, world war, famines. Something same may happen. World is fearing a Kinderberger trap. Okay. Charles Kinderberger, the architect of Marshall Plan, talked about it. So see, Trump's tariff, what it is doing, Trump tariff, they are bypassing the WTO, exposing the weakness of WTO mechanism, dispute settlement body, the DSB, and there is no appellate body where you can go in WTO. That's the greatest drawback. Okay, so this is happening now. What needs to be done? This is your main question. What options do the WTO members have to salvage? How to revive it? How to rejuvenate it? So yes, first of all, there needs to be an appellate body. Let there be an appellate body. What will it do? It will balance. It will balance efficiency and transparency. Let us see how things are happening and within what time they are delivering the result. Then we need improved trade policy transparency to promote mutual trust. Okay, so that is again lacking here. WTO at times has not sided with the developing countries. That is why there is a lot of mistrust here. Then you can talk about the plurilateral agreements to address emerging world trade challenges. Emerging trade reforms are required here. More inclusiveness is required in this platform. Update the rules. Update the rule book of WTO. Why? Because the modern trade issues are not addressed by the existing rule book. So you need to update it further. High-level political consensus among major global powers. Now this thing is missing. So members need to stress on these things. That please come on the common ground. Let us do something which revives this organization. You can conclude it by writing that WTO largely depends on cooperation and adaptation. And because of this, reforms are a must. These reforms, you can write, will address the existing institutional challenges that WTO is facing. Okay, it can be revitalized, but then you need to bring members on the board over here. See the next question. Non-alignment 2.0 underscores India's unique aspiration to emerge as a site for an alternative universality. Very good question this is. See, non-alignment is mentioned 3 times in your syllabus. Paper 2 syllabus, 2 words are mentioned 3 times, non-alignment and globalization. So you see, at times they connect it with multi-alignment. Last month they did that. Again you see question coming here, connecting with the global south and all. Now, what is this? Non-alignment 2.0. So it updates the Cold War era doctrine by focusing on strategic autonomy. Okay. Interdependencies in the world across economic, security and diplomatic maneuvering will happen here. Diplomacy will also be a part of it. Now 2.0, non-alignment 2.0 calls for more pragmatism. It calls for more diversified partnership. That is why this multi-alignment is happening. Okay, there is no adherence to one single block. These are things of past. Multi-alignment is the flavor of the day. So how it underscores India's unique aspiration. Now, India as a site for universality, alternative universality. How? See, India's adherence to pluralism, democracy, civilization and diversity provides it with a distinct voice. Voice for whom? voice for the global south in global affairs. See, 40 countries are willing to join BRICS. BRICS may not be perfect, but it shows the sense of anger global south has against the existing multilaterals. Okay, so, and India will be an alternative to what I have written, Western liberalism and Asian authoritarianism, the likes of China, the likes of Western liberalism. So something in between will emerge from here. India's role as a voice for global south. Now the India calls itself Vishwa Bandhu, friend to all. Okay, especially and repeatedly Dr. Jaishankar has said that I am a representative of the global south. Now, another thing we can see here that Dr. Jaishankar's perspective, what he says that India will be a bridge between whom? Established and emerging international orders. One which is there, the other which has to come, which will have more pluralism and inclusivity for those who have not until now not been properly represented. Okay, so this will try, non-alignment 2.0 will try to maximize the strategic space and promote a multipolar rule-based order. Okay, now criticism you can say that how will it be practiced? Okay, because world is increasingly becoming more turbulent. So how will it be practiced? There are institutional bottlenecks here. Then what you see, the greatest strength of non-alignment 2.0, it lies in the visionary ambition to redefine India's global role and positioning this country in a way it has not been positioned until now. Now, India is rejecting what is called binary alignments because it is emphasizing on multilateralism. So, this will call for, what does this call for? This call for a major evolution in India's foreign policy also. How exactly? No passive neutrality. Don't wait for things to happen, rather make them happen. Bring a more proactive, strategic, energetic role in your foreign policy. Okay, create maximum options. Please, Shyam Saran has talked about this. Former Ambassador Shyam Saran, he said, India needs to create maximum options. See, Act East will be there. Sagar Mahasagar will be there. Okay. Emergence of India as net security provider in Indian Ocean will be there. All these things will be there. See the next one. India's reluctance to perceive any existential threat inevitably made the multilateral path to nuclear security a default option until it decided to cross the nuclear Rubicon in 98. What is this thing we are talking about? India did nuclear exposure in 98. Uske pehle there was a hesitancy. Analyze some of the major reasons behind the shift in India's position on the nuclear question. 20-mark question, wonderful question again. So you can start by contextualizing India's historical nuclear policy. What will you write there? Reluctance to view nuclear weapons as a very much existential necessity. India kabhi aisa nahi chahta tha. But then this was again grounded in what? Idealism. It was grounded in, but 1998 nuclear test happened. Idealism paved way for realism, right? So that is what is meant by crossing the nuclear Rubicon. Now, major reason, this is what you can write this, what I said in 1 or 2 line. Abhi jo bataya, 1 to 2 line you can sum it up. Okay. Now, what were the reasons? Major reasons: regional security challenges, hostile neighbors. You know the 2 lovely neighbors that we have. Pata hai sabko? China and Pakistan. Okay. Now dissatisfaction with the nuclear non-proliferation. So India says this is discriminatory. And it says it creates, yes, nuclear haves and have-nots. Why? Before 1967, if you have done you know these things, right? I'm not going into that. Now, action of established powers, global nuclear, see, US and Russia, they are the one responsible for India's shift. How? Because see, India's concerns, they were rooted in failure of these two superpowers. First USSR, then Russia still remains a great power. So failure of these countries to make any meaningful engagement, meaningful materialism of non-proliferation, nuclear disarmament. India says if disarmament has to happen, it has to be a genuine disarmament. These two countries did nothing. Then next thing you see, India's growing disillusionment regarding CTBT and FMCT. You can also write here NPT. Why? Because these control regimes, they are not doing what they were meant to do. How could Pakistan come up with a nuclear weapon? How we are hearing stories that North Korea is also, how Iran is trying to enrich. So there are issues. And if horizontal proliferation is bad, so is vertical proliferation. You can't say sixth country cannot have it, but 5 countries can have 500 or 50,000. This is not done. That is what creates nuclear haves and have-nots. Now you can conclude this by writing that India's nuclear path reflects a pragmatic amalgamation, pragmatic marriage of principle and power. And of course, we practice what is called no first use doctrine. Okay, so there is a normative commitment, there is a strategic necessity. Okay, and you can quote Rajesh Rajgopalan. Okay, you can quote him in the end. He says that India's nuclear strategy is not only about acquiring nuclear weapons, but also about asserting its strategic autonomy and ensuring its own national security. Wonderful quote it is, you can write it. Let us see the next one. 2 of them are left now.
GS Paper 1 decides the fate of every UPSC aspirant in the prelims. To clear it, you need more than hard work. You need clarity, coverage, and smart revision. That's why we bring you Fast Track Course 2026. Meticulously designed to build a firm command over general study subjects, the foundation for prelim success. This dynamic program is tailored for aspirants who want accelerated learning, efficient revision, and absolute conceptual clarity. Here's what it includes: complete coverage of GS prelim subject, PT 365 current affairs classes, comprehensive and updated digital study material, personalized student portal with live plus online classes, sectional mini test for performance tracking, dedicated mentorship for guidance and maximization, with structured planning, efficient time utilization, and focused mentorship. Fast Track Course 2026 transforms preparation into confidence and confidence into success. Enroll for the Fast Track Course 2026 starting 13th October 2 p.m. Your fastest route to mastering GS Paper 1 and clearing UPSC prelims with confidence. To know more or register, visit our website or call us on the given numbers.
Discuss some of the key drivers of India's new interest in Africa. Developing long-term comparative advantage. So in your GS, a question came this year in paper 2 IR, General Studies I am talking about, India-Africa digital partnership. Okay, India is building digital partnership with Africa, especially with 4 countries, Togo, Ghana, there are others also. So India's renewed interest. See, shared historical ties, legacy of, yes, colonialism. Struggle have been same. Okay, cultural connections have been there. India's soft power approach. So India's soft power approach, you have our this thing, digital unified payment, UPI is there, Namibia, then Togo. Okay, here also India is doing. Ghana has also shown interest. Then you can add here by writing that how Africa's natural resources, it's a very resource rich continent. Resource rich poor continent, just like Central Asia, resource rich poor region. Why this resource rich then poor region? They don't have the technology to harness those resources. So that's why India needs to be there, because if China is already there, China has no regard for the local laws. All that, and there is no consensus in Chinese approach. There are clandestine projects. Interest rate would increase. Commercial rate of interest 6.5%. Sri Lanka, Hambantota. Matala Rajapaksa International Airport. Okay, they are building an artificial island near Colombo. Now Sri Lanka is under debt. Okay, and here also, Angola. Angola is repaying Chinese debt with crude oil. Uganda, only international airport it had is taken over by China. So India goes for a mutual consensus oriented approach here. Now, here you can write this, that India will, Africa's natural resources, its critical minerals and the opportunities, emerging consumer markets, especially for two-wheelers and compact four-wheelers, not your SUVs, but something like compact cars, you know, okay. Yes. So these things India is trying to do there. These things present a significant economic opportunity for India. Now this is very much contrary to the Chinese extractive model. China क्या करता है? Extract करता है. India what it does? It builds consensus. Okay. Now India's involvement in sectors like IT services, pharmaceuticals, okay, manufacturing investment, all these are the new areas. Now geopolitical imperatives. See this geopolitical imperative, there you can write that India views Africa as a strategic partner. Okay, wants to secure both regional and maritime security, especially in the IOR. And India's growing security presence is there. Africa is needed to be on India's side. Africa will also serve as a counterbalance to China's expanding footprint in this region. Okay, this will also be there. Then you can write about the multilateral and global South solidarity. Africa remains a vital component of the global South. Okay, so global South cooperation, Africa is needed for promoting a genuine multipolar, and genuine multilateralism is required. Without Africa, it cannot happen. Okay, then you can also talk about innovation in technology. India's use of innovation, Pan-African e-network, digital financial system, the UPI that India is giving them. So this will elevate Africa's status, deliver services to their people. And you can conclude it by writing that India is evolving its relationship with Africa. And why? Because Africa remains a valuable ally of India. It was at the behest of India that Africa became a member of G20 Delhi Summit 2 years back. It should be renamed to G21 now. Okay. And India is positioning itself as a long-term partner. So its approach will offer a distinctive model of engagement that counters China's dominant style of positioning. State-led approach will not be there. Clandestine agreements will not be there. Transparent agreements will be there. Mutual benefit will be there. Okay. Last one. Potential role India can play in initiating a possible phase of trilateral economic engagement among India, China. So again, a wonderful question. See the developments that are happening in Nepal. Okay, you can start this by writing that Nepal is a buffer state between India and China. Okay, Nepal remains a buffer state. You know what is the role of a buffer state? It minimizes the conflict. See, if not for Nepal and Bhutan, India-China border will be running from Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal. Chances of conflict will be more. buffer reduces the conflict. So Nepal aims to develop every country in India's vicinity. Now it needs to have equal partnership with both India and China. So here you can write about what India can do for the Trans-Himalayan connectivity corridor. Actually, Nepal last year, December 2024, signed BRI. It joined BRI in 2017. It signed BRI in December 24, and it has said no loans, only grants, because they know what Chinese loan can do. So there is a lot of apprehension in Nepal regarding the Chinese debt, that it should not be there. So India should involve, Trans-Himalayan connectivity corridor should involve all the three countries. Build infrastructure, build your roads, transport, energy supply lanes, railways, all that. One thing India can do then, India can harness the strength in IT, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, renewable energy, all these things, and complements Nepal's development and China's infrastructure initiative. Convince China that we have nothing against you. This is just for the common good for all the three participants. Collaborative projects can be taken up. Hydropower projects can happen. Tourism projects can happen. Environmental conservation projects can happen. Okay. Then you can talk about that India can engage into security dialogue with both Nepal and China. This will help to build trust and address the common concerns like border management, intrusion, and all these things. And by engaging in such dialogues, you can also write that India can counterbalance China's growing influence in Nepal without escalating tension. So you need very deft diplomacy here, that bring China and try to counter China by involving Nepal. That we three need to act together. Okay. Then you can write about that India should explore the avenues of BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC and SAARC both. Revive SAARC if needed, throw Pakistan away. Okay, but the confronted approach of Pakistan has resulted into India-Pakistan dispute playing there, it has become defunct. So at least use BIMSTEC. Okay. And India's role in these platforms, both SAARC and BIMSTEC, would ensure that Nepal development aspirations are not overshadowed, okay, by one particular partner, because it will also have both India and China there. Then people to people. Now this is where China will not be able to match India. The cultural connectivity. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj said, India Nepal have roti beti ka rishta. You understand roti beti ka rishta? Cuisines are same, marriages happen. Go to Mithilanchal area in Bihar, you will see every family has one relative living in Nepal. Correct? So you talk about this, educational exchanges, cultural diplomacy, tourism, societal bonds, all these things. And issues are there. Okay. Discuss the potential. And you need to write about issues here. All this you can write, but issues would be that Nepal is tilting towards China. Now that the Maoists are gone, we have a temporary arrangement, let us wait for 6 months. Do you think India has a role to play? Even if you think, they don't write it. Because your government is silent. Government issued advisory, government nahi, party in power issued advisory to its Karyakartas that no one will talk about Nepal. Which makes me think, I shall not say. So no, government of India ka hame kuch pata hi nahi, they have done. So see, Nepal is insisting on sovereign equality. So India says, how sovereign equality? You are dependent on us. Okay. So competing priorities between India and China are there. So India's approach needs to be quite flexible here. Avoid unnecessary intrusion. Avoid the blunder of getting into their domestic debate on the role of Hinduism in post-monarchical Nepal. आपसे पूछा जाए तब बोलो, बिना मतलब का मत बोलो. If you are asked, then you tell. Give your advice. Don't give unsolicited advice. Role of Hinduism in post-monarchical Nepal is something which Nepalis will decide. Government should not. These things are done in incognito mode. Activate your agencies for these things if needed. But don't directly, yes, yes, you do this or you don't do. Are you understanding it? Then you can conclude this answer by writing that, see, India has a unique opportunity here. Okay. India needs to focus on connectivity projects, tangible projects. Establish a Ramayan corridor from Nepal to Sri Lanka. Let India build everything over there. Okay. Something like this you can suggest here. And India can also transform the regional dynamics, ensure that Nepal's sovereignty is maintained while addressing India's security concerns also. As far as China is concerned here, India's role as a regional power, you can sum it up, not only as a regional power, but as a trusted partner of Nepal, okay, which can manage the competing interest with China. In a way, this should be done in a way which will ensure long-term stability, security, and prosperity for all the three countries involved here. So such things you need to write. Okay then, thanks.